So, Gemini, this is for you. The interesting part is I already recorded this reading for Gemini, and because of Mercury retrograde, I'm guessing, um, I lost the recording. So here we go again. I'm going to honor that maybe it wasn't the right frequency, maybe it wasn't quite the right reading, maybe you've all upgraded yourselves already, and we need another meeting. So this is the reading for April. So, which we've just started the month. We've got quite a bit going on. Solar eclipse coming up. We are in the middle of eclipse season now. Mercury retrograde. Like there's always a lot going on. And I want to honor that the collective part is not for us to say like, oh my God, the planets and the things, and oh, it's also hard. It's really just like, what collective soup are we in? How can we move our energy systems according to the conditions? And what influence does the collective have on us as individuals and communities? And particularly with this information, how do we organize it into that's mine, that's part of the collective, and how does the alchemy show up for me? So I'm hoping that these readings provide some juicy information, some interesting points to discuss within yourself, and just prepares you for the energies coming up and empowers you to align with still what your highest needs are. And that can be uncomfortable sometimes, and it can be difficult, particularly when we go into the shadow work. So the shadow work is, what part of me is trying to be healed, and how do I engage with that? Rather than sitting in the ego saying, I don't want anything to be hard. Why is it always hard? Shadow work honors the difficult parts are the parts that represent learning and growth. And we need that as well as the smooth, easy, effortless parts. So I'm interested to see how this reading is different to the last, because the last one was pretty big. So let's see what comes through. We'll do a 3-card reading as usual with a shadow card on top. Ooh, we have some reverse cards. So interesting energy for you, Gemini. You've got Gemini in your chart anyway, sun, moon, or rising. So we are starting off with what kind of action have we been taking or can we take that represents emotional and spiritual nourishment, or at least being led from the heart space. So how have our emotions stirred us into action? And what emotions would lead us towards more emotional nourishment? What comes through, Gemini, is like, are we actually being led by the right emotions? Are we acting out of love, compassion, nourishment, respect? Or are we acting out of anger, hate, resentment, and jealousy, and all the other emotions that might be available to us? Knight of Cups is, even though it's a young energy, it is about action. So think about a young man and that yang energy. But this man is motivated by emotions and intuition and senses and feeling. So in that almost naive energy, how are we acting upon the things that we want? This talks to me about, even though you've been hurt, are you still acting with a young heart, which says, well, I still believe in connection. I still believe in trust. And I still believe in leading with the heart. And I still believe in being kind. And I still believe in compassion for everyone. But am I actually honoring what it takes for me to stay in a compassionate place within? Am I feeding my own compassion? Am I coming from unconditional love? Or am I putting myself in situations, environments where I'm more likely to lead with doubt, fear, frustration, scarcity, whatever that is, right? It's becoming more and more rare to lead from a place of compassion or to take action from a place of compassion. So it might be like, even though I'm feeling scared and doubtful, can I still take the action around what I want, what is nourishing for me, right? Can I open my heart up again? Can I prioritize what is nourishing for me emotionally and spiritually? Not nourishing for my ego, not gossiping and bitching about everything else, not complaining and projecting, not blaming everything outside of me, actually saying, what keeps me in a loving space? Is it the boundary work? Is it the shadow work? Is it the navigating how much contact I can have with certain people? Is it my work environment? Is it my community environment? We've got some black cockatoo medicine coming over too. So confirmation for us. Because if we can figure out the action part, like from what space am I taking action, we can move into what is seen as a sense of victory, which is like, finally, I can prioritize these things for myself, which means that I can protect a sense of love and nourishment and fulfillment in my life, which is a triumph. Incredibly rewarding space, incredibly a space that you can be very proud of. It's like, can I actually improve my relationships to a point where they all feel safe and nourishing and inspiring, right? I used to say that inspiration is the currency of a soul contract that's aligned for us, which means if you come into contact with someone, and this is a soul contract alchemy thing, if you in that alchemy or coming out of that alchemy feel inspired, you're likely to be on a soul contract that is actually providing nourishment for you, whether it's easy or convenient or not. Does that make sense? Because soul contracts, soul mates, big soul contracts are really not about how it looks, or the black cockatoos will keep going. It's not about how it looks and how convenient it is. And, it's not always about how many shared interests we have. And if we're in the same age group or demographic, I heard a story recently of a 2.5-year-old toddler whose best friend is this beautiful 40-year-old woman that's a friend of his mother's. Maybe there's a soul contract. I think it's a beautiful paradigm that age really has no limits when it comes to alchemy. And it might be the most strangely fitting thing on the outside, but if it provides emotional and spiritual nourishment, and we get a sense that it's good and serving for us, which is it's a win, right? It's a victory. This is good for me and this feels good within me. Then we can actually reverse what it means to always only take action from the mind space. So a reversed Knight of Swords tells me that if all we ever do is take action from our mental plane, we're actually giving our thoughts the greatest power. We are saying, because I've proed and conned that relationship and I've decided that it is good for me, I'm going to take action. But what about the emotional part? What about how does my body feel in connection to this? How does my soul stir for the connection? And can I rely on that? There's a whole nother feeling sense and a whole nother way to govern all the different parts of our life. And what if we led with the Heart Emperor? I know it's risky. I know it can feel naive. I know it can be, but the mind goes, oh, but we got hurt last time and it doesn't make sense and that person's not good for me. But like, what does the heart actually say? And if it's risky, then can we actually get the nourishment, the connection, the fulfillment with the necessary boundaries? So it's not just this fight and flight experience all the time. It's like, what do I need? How can I get it? And it's not always going to be convenient for the mind, because if our intention is to have a meaningful life filled with purpose, connection, abundance, truth, meaning, and that grit that we long for, we have to face the truth of that It's going to be really uncomfortable at times. Shadow work's uncomfortable. Inner work's uncomfortable. Inner child work's uncomfortable. Spiritual work's uncomfortable. If you sit with any person that dedicated a couple of decades to their spiritual work, they will sit in discomfort for decades. If you think about the spiritual leaders from our past, they went through trials and tribulations and pain and suffering to get where they were, but they were led by something greater than the mind. I can guarantee you, for spiritual awakenings and initiations and spiritual training, your mind is never going to be comfortable with it. There's never going to make heaps of sense to go off and do a vision quest on your own in nature. It's never going to make complete mental sense why you would trust in a teacher or a mentor or someone that's representing a life that you might want, because we've been conditioned and programmed to not challenge the status quo and not want anything more than material comfort. Those programs are still very strong. And to have relationships that represent some kind of idealistic nature from the outside. But any person that gets inside a long-term, respectful, loving commitment can tell you it's a huge experience. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of commitment and investment and time and energy and money to come into harmony with strong alchemy, to actually keep on pursuing connection and companionship and love with people when people represent so much discomfort and pain and suffering, particularly of the mind. So it is a big reading for you, Gemini. My goodness. This is telling me that we just need to change some of the action. So if you go back to action, how am I acting upon what I think is right, where I could be acting upon what I think feels nourishing for me? And sometimes you can be surprised by that. So sometimes I'm feeling emotionally and spiritually nourished by the strangest things. At times it could be time alone, or then it could be deep conversations with loved ones. It could be pursuing a new hobby that is expensive and draining and all those things. But for some reason, I'm eating it up and it's lovely. And it might not make sense to my schedule, to who I think I am, but let's lead with the heart space. So Gemini, if you're used to proing and coing, weighing things up, and I know you like that mental energy, why don't we put that aside just for April and say, what stirs my heart space? What makes my heart sing? What lights me up right now? And how can I go towards that with a sense of a naive, almost like the fool energy a little bit? How can I embrace something new and take action towards it just for the sake that it might fill up my cup a little bit? Not for the sake of money and security and all these things, right? I kind of like that playful energy. It sort of feels like you're going to take a risk on something and it's going to be a little bit outside your normal scope, but it might surprise you how nourishing it is. Yep. So when it shows up in April, Gemini, take action. So the shadow aspects that I want you to be mindful of is when spider medicine comes in, there is a creative invitation, a creativity bigger and scarier than you're willing to actually understand. So I want you to see if you can, and it makes heaps of sense with the Knight of Cups sitting here. The Knight of Cups might open up a doorway to something new creatively that you're going to do that blows your expectation. Spider comes in with this frightful sense of, you better start creating because this is actually really big. It might be you sit down to write a few words and all of a sudden it's a very long blog, or you have the feeling that you want to take up drawing again and you fill a whole art book. Spider comes in with this, let's open the doorways stirred by nothing but curiosity, and be willing to go into the dark spaces and surprise yourself. Because that will represent a personal victory of some kind. You're going to figure something out or discover something in that creative unlocking. So my encouragement is find an outlet, do something different. Don't wait for it to make sense, and don't figure it out before you do it. Just start. You know, it might be that you want to cook something beautiful and then you end up with a degustation menu that you want to share with your friends. You know, there's going to be an idea that shows up in this portal that's going to be really important for you. I've got a really good feeling about April for you, Gemini. So make sure you go into the depths and you find that sense of, I want grit and depth and meaning. And I know in that meaning and in that depth, you'll find something. And it is cup territory. So it's got to do with emotions and connection and love and spirituality. So go for it, Gemini. You've got this. I love you so much. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next month. Bye.